Good afternoon, I'm Joshua Finn from J&H Aerospace. Today we're going to build the Carbonette 19 Catapult glider. First things first, I want to clarify, if you are here for the radio-controlled discus-launched version of this aircraft, this is not the video for you. So go look in your instruction manual for this, or go on our website or what have you and find the link to the video for it, because there's no parts commonality between these two. So get back to this airplane. This is your AMA Catapult competition catapult glider equipped with a dethermalizer. So we will get started on building that right after we show you the inventory for everything. So you have all your templates in here for any parts should you break them and need to replace them. First thing, you have a loop of 1/8 inch rubber, that's for your catapult. Also the handle for your catapult. You'll have another thinner piece of rubber, and this is for two things. It is for your wing opening band for the dethermalizer. It's also for the tension band for your timer for your dethermalizer. Included in here, in your plastic baggie, a bunch of small parts. You want to make sure you have all of these. So you have your dethermalizer timer. You'll have a piece of aluminum tubing. This is going to be the axle for your wing. You will have two kind of heavy gauge wire hooks, and these are for the rubber band that raises your wing. Then you'll have these two U-shaped pieces, and I'm not even going to try to show you these on camera. They're U-shaped pieces of thinner wire, and those are the guides for your dethermalizer hold down line. And we'll stick all of that back in its package. Alright, so you have your carbon fiber tail boom. You should have two pieces of thin basswood strip for your leading edges, 1/16 balsa tail surfaces, plywood parts, an assortment of plywood parts. This is your fuselage core and part of your wing saddle. You'll notice there's a seemingly duplicate of that part. This is a piece of lead sheeting for balancing weight, and then you should have, and you can tell which one's the top based on the density of the burns, the burn mark, cut marks, whatever you want to call them. Have a left wing and a right wing and a left wing, something like that. So now that we left one thing out, have a piece of spider wire in here, and this is your wing hold down line, also for your dethermalizer system. And to keep that from getting lost, I am going to stick it in the plastic baggie. We don't ship it that way because it can get tangled up in those U-hooks. Alright, so let's get started. Now that you've got your wings sitting in front of you, you've laid this out on some wax paper because we're going to need that in a minute. Take a new razor blade, single edge or double edge, or you can use an X-Acto knife. You want to cut your wings free. And do a little bit of freeing of that right there. So there's one wing, and we'll free the other one real quick. And there we go. What you're going to do now is you're going to take some CA glue, and we're going to temporarily join these wings together. And don't join them real aggressively, because eventually we're going to cut them back apart. Now, next thing we're going to do is get out your 1/32 basswood strips. You're going to take these and you need to go wet them in the sink, which I will go do now. Alright, now that we've got these strips wet, what we're going to do is go along the, we're going to set this as the top, so we're going to glue these along the bottom. And much like your wings, you're going to do your wing panels, you're going to do your leading edge stripping in halves. So, put this in place. Just start sticking down. And then just guide it all the way around. And you can decide how far around the wingtip you want to put it. I don't think it makes a huge difference in durability. But you definitely do want to have it along the main part of your wing because that takes a beating on hard landings. And any glider with a reverse dethermalizer always has lots of hard landings. And there we go. And I glued myself to the bottom of the wing. Hey, means I've worked on this airplane since I've glued myself to it. And then trim off your excess. And there you go. So the next thing we're going to do, if you're one of those that likes to have a guide for where to set your airfoil high point, you can do that. I personally don't, because I'm just going to wedge this up to about my 75% chord point here. So it's just going to, basically I'm going to set straight across there. So take a razor plane. Please, if you're going to build one of these, invest in a razor plane. It saves a huge amount of time. And we're not going to put all of this on video. We'll come back in after I have progressed along there. Okay, so you have, at this point we have our wedge shape. High point is right here because basically I stopped planing along that line. A fairly decent finish. So at this point, now you're going to come around to your leading edge. And basically you're going to taper cut around like so. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to run around like that. Take maybe 2 passes on this side. Turn around. Do 2 passes on the other side. And keep working your way around like that. And we'll come back when I've got this done. Fairly well-defined high point going all the way around. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple of passes here. Now that we have, anyway, yeah, had an interruption there. And I accidentally was going under here, and I actually had the depth for this razor blade too far, and I actually cut all the way through. But the bottom line is you want to make a couple passes down here to get your Phillips entry carved into the to the bottom of your wing. Looks like I'm only going to be able to make 1 pass, and that's okay. So. Alright, so at that point, now we can pull out some sandpaper, sanding block. I can sand this wing down. And what I like to do is start with the back portion of the wing here. And try to clear out as much stuff from getting under the wing as possible. And we're just going to sand the flat area back here. We're going to try to sand it as flat as possible. And kind of curl down here on the edges, and you actually let it curl over a little bit. Just bring everything together. You want to taper down your thickness real well down out there. Alright, so at that point what we want to do is look and see that the light shines down here evenly, so we've got that nice and flat. So once you've got that, then you can come around here to the leading edge and do the same thing with the leading edge. And we'll come back when we get that done completely. Okay, so we have the leading edge formed. I've gone ahead and I've tapered out the tips, so right about here I start just rounding off my high point. You can see I leave it fairly well defined along this area, out a little past the dihedral brakes. Now what we want to do is our final bit is to sand in some fillet entry on the underside of the wing. So we just come around and we work our way around doing that. Just kind of round it upwards. So you see I'm rocking things back and forth to provide that. You do that all the way out there into the wingtip. This will give some real nice glide pattern, real nice skull characteristics, and will hopefully help our launch transition that much more. And there you have it. So at that point your wing is completely carved out. So next thing we'll do is I'll go get a saw. We're going to cut the wing back apart here, and we're also going to cut it here, and then we'll set the dihedral. Now that we have our saw, we will go ahead and cut the wing apart. You can start anywhere along here that you want to. The main thing is to make these smooth cuts across. And those of you asking about washout, these wingtip dihedral brakes are angled outward enough so that the wing is angled down in the tips when you glue it back, and that gives you your washout. Almost there. And we'll just continue that on around. We'll come back when we're done cutting those. Now that you have your wings separated, you can go ahead and sand for dihedral. You can start anywhere you want to. I'm going to start on the center section here. Just sand it in a little bit here. The main thing is to make sure everything stays straight there. And there we go. Got a good fit on that. I'm going to improve it just a little bit here. Your center section dihedral is very, very slight compared to the outboard. And now we'll go ahead and we'll adjust our outboard. round it off a bit, so we gotta come back in here and adjust that. Alright, there we go. And now we'll do it on this one. And have a good fit. Okay. You have these two dihedral gauges. Pick the thicker one and use it for your center section dihedral. And we've got a little trick we'll do for the rest of it. So make sure you have the correct panels lined up in the correct places. And you have to move fairly quickly when you do this because the CA will harden very, very rapidly. So lay this down on our wax paper, join everything together here, slide the gauge under there, and it's already mostly hardened. So those of you that are not comfortable with doing that, you can do it with epoxy and it'll give you more working time. You will, if you do epoxy it though, take a pin and poke it in here, put a bunch of holes so the epoxy can soak in all the way. Now that we've got the center section, we're going to add a little extra dihedral out there on the tips. And the way we do that is we take the second dihedral gauge and we join it on top of the other one. So we'll get a little bit more dihedral. You can pin that or you can just glue it. I'm going to tack glue it, so if I were to build another one of these, I would be able to pull these apart. It's actually not true. If I build another one of these, I'm just going to cut an entire new kit because I have the laser cutter. Alright, so again, we join these and stick it down, and it's already hardened up pretty well. And there we go. So we've got our desired dihedral angle. And now we just have one more here. In place. And there you go. That one hardened very quickly. Alright, now I will mention you can glue in your wash-in wedge at any time. I'm going to go ahead and do it now. I'm going to just make a very, very small wash-in wedge for this airplane because it does not need a whole lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to cut a piece that's about 1/2 inch long. I'm actually going to split this to about 2/3 height, like so. And now I'm going to bevel it. So now you have this wedge-shaped piece. If you are left-handed, you're going to do this the opposite of what I do. So if you're left-handed, put it over here. If you're a right-hander like me, you're going to put this piece on this side because this is going to be your left wing. If you're right-handed, you want your glider to go to the left. And actually, I'm going to try something different because everybody tells me to do this. I'm going to put it on the outboard panel here. I've tried it out there before and haven't really noticed a difference, but hey. Lee Hines says to put it out there, so I'm going to try it. and Lee has never steered me wrong. Alright, and we'll go ahead and clean up the brakes here too. And that one's good, and so is that one. A little bit of slight misalignment there. And there you have it, completed wing. And you'll wait to finish this, because you finish the whole airplane at the same time with your Minwax or dope or whatever you choose to use. So now we're going to move on to our fuselage. So cut out your fuselage piece from the 1/8 inch balsa sheet that you have. And got a little spot that's being resistive. Right here. There we go. We'll set that aside, we'll get the saddle out of there in a minute. Next thing to do is get your fuselage side panels done. And in my case, I left the label on my balsa or plywood here. Peel that off. Might have something to do with why that didn't completely come out of there so easy like. Alright, and we're going to continue separating that. We'll come back when I get all these parts separated out of here. Alright, and you've got a couple little holes here that you've got to clean out on these fuselage sides. And there we have it. Now, what I like to do is I like to have the one with the hole in it. I like to have that on the left side. That's just what works for me personally. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take on my right side, smear CA on here. Try not to get too much glue in those little bitty pinholes back there, but you're probably going to plug them. And then the main thing is this center hole needs to be lined up perfectly. And now we just repeat that over on this side. And be mindful of the fact that if you don't do this over a nice flat surface, you can get a fuselage that's curved like a banana. So try to avoid that. And there we go. And that's a nice straight fuselage. We'll go ahead and we will round this off real nice. Well, not round it off, but we'll sand it straight. And up here at the nose you can round off a little bit for streamlining, although I don't think it makes a huge difference. But it looks cool. Okay, next thing to do is break out your little U-hooks that we talked about earlier. There we go. And it does not particularly matter which set of holes you put these in. but basically they go in like every other hole on each side. So what I'm going to do is squirt some glue in there along those lines. Insert this one and try not to go all the way through. You want to leave enough exposed that you can get to it. And then do the same thing over here with corresponding other holes. You may have to use a pair of pliers to shove these through. It just depends. These are being really cooperative for me today. So now those are in place. Next thing, you can, at this point, go ahead and pull out your dethermalizer timer and try not to send it flying everywhere like I did. And I've got a little bit of a tight fit in there, and that's some of the flashing around the edge seems to be the main problem. And now it snaps in place. And you can choose to glue this or just leave it as it is, if it fits tight enough. Like this one it is not coming out, so I'm not going to glue it. Next thing to do is take your tail boom, test fit it, make sure there's no conflicts, seeing as there are not. Squirt some CA in here. And roll this in there enough to ensure that it gets good contact. And there you go. So it's now attached. Now we're going to, actually no, we can go ahead and we can put the rest of these mounts in here. So we're going to cut these almost semicircular looking parts out. This is your finger grip. And you'll have two of those. So we're going to take those, we're going to glue them together. And now, this top edge, sand it, bevel it, so it's nice and sharp on the top. And then, just aft of your little axle hole here, take your razor blade, cut in at the bottom of the fuselage, and shove this guy in here. You want to get it so that, so I left my thumbnail there, that means I went about 1/8 of an inch in. So that I would not go any less than that, because you're going to put a lot of tension on this guy. Now, next thing you can do is these little hook-looking parts. This is if you have built AMA gliders before, this is probably a rather unusual looking catapult hook. It's just one that happened to work for me for this model. We ran into a lot of problems with making sure that we wouldn't get our fingers in the way of the tail on launch. And there we go. And now we'll join those together. Alright, so I have sanded the top of this to a sharp bevel, just like I did with the hand grip. And now we're going to come under the bottom of the nose here. We're going to cut in the same way we did with the fuselage further back. We're going to insert this in. You can hear it splitting apart a little bit. I'm going to squish that so that you open it up a little. And now, insert this in here. Make sure you firmly glue this in place because it's under quite a bit of load, and I have had these glue out or pull out when I did not glue them well enough. So don't be in a huge hurry on this. Alright, there's our completed main fuselage, and we'll come back in a minute and work on the wing saddle. Now take your plywood parts, the remaining ones, and go ahead and pop all of these out. These are going to form your wing saddle for your pivoting wing. We've also got these circular parts, kind of oblong looking. You'll understand why in a minute. And of course open up all the little holes there. Okay, now over here in our where we got our fuselage core from originally, we're going to pop that remaining piece out, and there's an identical piece over here with your tail surfaces. Okay. Take these two and you're just going to stack them on top of each other and glue them in place. And now, take one of your plywood side plates and join this up to it. You'll see that there are notches up at the top that correspond to the profile of this piece. And in a minute, if you're confused by this, in a minute I'm going to show you exactly how this lays in. Alright, so now you can see how that goes into place. And then the only thing we have to do after that is take the other one of these panels. It's got a rough spot on it. And we're going to join it on top. You want to line these up fairly closely, or attempt to. And you can get to watch me be Butterfingers tonight. And in my case, I see that I actually got this off by a little bit. So one hole is ahead of the other. And so I've got to go back here a little bit. And now they're the backs of the holes are parallel, and then you're going to take these those little circular pieces, grain going across is how you tell which way to orient them, and that'll make them line up correctly. The reason that you need these is to give you some extra thickness around that axle, because otherwise you'll get excess wear on that part. And there we have it. Now, next thing we'll do, here we go, is we'll go ahead and get that axle out, and I'm going to sand one end of it a little bit to round it off. That way we can make sure it fits through. Because this is a tight fit, and it is supposed to be a tight fit. The reason for that is we don't actually build in any retention on this axle. And as long as you do this right, for the life of the airplane, you should not run into any problems there. So now slide this in place, and you should be able to push this axle all the way through. Being a little bit resistant there, so we'll slide it out and we'll try to push it through the other way. There we go. And then verify that this comes up without too much resistance. Seems to be about right. So now, at this point, I can come in here. Actually, I'm going to tell you to do, no, we'll do it this way. Let's go ahead and glue our wing on. Now you can build a jig to, or set up a jig or what have you to get this all perfect like. I personally just make sure the dihedral line is parallel and then look to make sure we're mostly straight up and down here. It does not have to be perfect. The main thing is your relationship to the tail itself. And then I like to come back and put a little bit of a fillet here with glue just to secure the wing a little bit better. Again, and pivot smoothly. Now go ahead and cut out your tail surfaces. And I recommend taking a razor plane and planing these off, and we'll come back in a minute when I've finished doing that. Alright, we've sanded an airfoil shape into our stab, into our rudder. Now the rudder is formed flat on the bottom. Of course, we've got those alignment pegs and whatnot. So if you airfoil it like me, you're going to have to cut into this a little bit without breaking the tab there. And this will allow you to get a good fit onto your horizontal stab. Some will ask, well, why don't you form the rudder that way automatically? I assume some of you are going to cheat and just round off the edges of your stab. So then you would have, wouldn't be able to get your stab to fit correctly. And that drops in alright. This tab is coming through a little bit too far. Same with the front one. Now at this point, we come in here and make sure we're mostly straight up and down. We are. We've got a real pretty fit. Now, this is actually the hard part, because now we have to join this to our tail. We want this to be fairly well aligned. If you're left-handed again, give yourself a little bit of left rudder. It doesn't take a whole lot, but you do want a little. And then the other thing is you're going to sight down there and you're going to have the stab parallel, the side of the stab parallel to this inboard panel. Now, I actually have enough glue on here. This is mostly bonded in. I'm going to go a little less than parallel to the, we'll go ahead and break it loose and do this right. Basically, the amount of stab tilt, if you're going to fly in a small field, use a fair amount of stab tilt. If you're going to fly in a big open field and you want to hunt thermals, use as little stab tilt as you can get away with. I have glued myself on with right rudder. So there we go. There's a teensy bit of left rudder. And that just helps us through the transition a little better. And there we go. We'll give it a little bit of a fillet here. And there we go. Okay, at this point, now we can rig our dethermalizer. Take this guy on the since I've got my timer on my left side, on my right side over here, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to string this through. And for this, I recommend actually using like a fishing knot, because this stuff is Teflon coated. It is quite surprisingly quite slippery. And then trim your little tail off here. And now thread through on the other side. And now what you're going to do is pull this up to about that angle. That's about 20 degrees. And kind of crease the line right there. Now slide it back through. So we've got the line creased there. And tie basically a little granny knot in here to form ourselves a loop. You'll understand what we're doing there in a minute. Basically, the rubber band that you use for your DT line is going to limit how far things can travel. Alright, so I've got that. I'm going to take another piece of this and form another small loop. Or we attempt to. Those of you that are experienced with flying these, you know what's going on here, and y'all can form these to whatever length you're comfortable with. So So this is just for people who've not done this before. Now take this rubber band, string this through here, and we want this to come up a little bit short here. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this to size and then roughly to size, tie it, and then we'll move the knot to get things right. So at this point, we're kind of loose up here. So take this knot, still a little loose. Basically, we want to get a decent travel rate on our timer here. It's still not really moving that well, so we'll tighten things up some more. This is going to require some trial and error on your part. If you're new to this, just understand you've got to actually spend some time in practice making sure that the needle will move. And at this point, the needle is slowly moving around, very slowly. Yeah, that's not fast enough. We'll make it move just a little quicker. So now we've got this shortened up quite a little bit. And that pulls around a little better. Waiting, 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 waiting. Come on. Almost there. Nice and slow, which is what you want. Okay, so it comes off. Now let's slide it around a little further. Make sure that it still moves, and yes it does. So at this point, I'm going to trim my excess off. And that part's taken care of. Now we take these little hooks, and we're going to stick one in the middle of our wing, about halfway back. Glue that firmly in place. And our other one, I glue out here. About halfway down the nose is good. Now, take a rubber band that's about half again larger than that distance. If you were doing this for you, do not just stop there with, put that on there with wet glue. So the thing we want to do is we want to tighten this up enough that it firmly pulls the wing up. Almost. A little bit of resistance. There we go. And this is, you're going to have to let it work in a little bit. There's a bit of a break-in period. So the important thing is, we'll pull this around, latch it in place, needle starts moving here. This little needle, I always run it on the top. It seems to work a little better if you run it on top, I don't know. I'm going to speed it along here so you can see. Needle slowly working its way around. Still working, still working. I know this is painfully slow to watch, but you want it like this because you're flying, especially in AMA competition. If you're in the UK, you're only flying 60-second maxes, but in the US, we're flying 2-minute maxes. Almost. And we have successful deployment. So at this point, I am going to step off camera for a second, and I'll be back with CG information. Alright, to balance this airplane, first of all, this airplane is not finished in terms of I have not doped it, have not painted it, etc. You don't even want to waste your time balancing it until you've done that. I'm just doing this for demo purposes. Your CG needs to be, well, my recommended starting CG is 2 1/16 inches back from the wing root leading edge. So let's set this on here like so. We're going to add lead until it balances there. So what we're going to do is we're going to just snip off some strips of lead to get our CG where we want it to be. Notice it's not very much, and that is just a, oh, am I good or am I good? Alright, so we're going to fold this up. You notice we've got this little hole in the nose, and the purpose of the hole is for us to stick balancing weight in there. Alright. So, yeah, we're balanced. And then you would want to glue that in place, and you can add and remove lead as needed to get your balance. We are going to do a trimming video on this airplane after I get it finished out here, so you'll see all of that. But the bottom line is I can glue some strips back here to shim the wing if I'm loopy, and I'll show you how to over-elevate it. And I'll show you how to do that. Alternatively, you can glue strips back here as per the norm of what we normally do. So you've got two different options. Those of you that are old pros at this would want a screw adjustment in here, and the reason I'm not including that is you have to drill and tap that after this mount is assembled, and since we don't supply that pre-assembled, it's impossible to drill and tap that for you. And then that requires you to have a drill and tap, so you might as well just leave it for you to do it yourself. So there you have it. Any questions, post them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching our video on building this airplane, and look for the trimming video below. See you.